What is the worst experience you have had at a fast food restaurant? I worked at McDonald's a while ago and some kids stole something from a nearby store and got chased by the cops into our parking lot. They ended up getting cornered into our drive-thru and one of them had been shot earlier in the chase and we watched him on our cameras get out of the car and fall on the ground and die while the paramedics tried to help him. Thing was rough. Edit. I guess I should clarify something. The cops didn't shoot the guy just because he stole a couple racks of beer. They shot him because as he was trying to get away, he had a gun and was shooting at the police. That was some bad storytelling on my part. It would be nice if violence by cops wasn't a thing to be worried about, but I'm sure from the officer's perspective, it would be nice if they didn't randomly get shot at by dumb people over petty theft. It's a complicated situation. Chipotle hands down. This wasn't really Chipotle's fault, rather an individual employee of Chipotle. This girl I was seeing and I went to Chipotle after class. She got a burrito and I got nachos. Everything was fine until I went to wake her up the next morning and she literally looked like she was dead. Took her to the ER and they admitted her immediately. She ended up spending almost a week in the hospital and almost died. Turns out someone poisoned the tomatoes and caused half a dozen people to get deathly sick. Luckily nobody died. Needless to say, I haven't been back. I once dropped my order at McDonald's and the fries went flying all over the floor, under tables etc. A couple of little kids, around 5, both filthy, instantly started snatching them up and eating them. It then became apparent that their parents hadn't bothered to order any food for their kids, just themselves. The 3 people ahead of me in line all complained about the wait, no more than 2-3 minutes each, despite hearing the shift manager apologizing to each person ahead of them for the wait and mentioning that 2 people had called in sick. He was running and getting everything everyone needed, and these 3 customers were so rude. When the lady ahead of me made her shitty comments about waiting so long, I told her to be patient, that they were clearly doing their best, and repeating that they were short 2 people. She snidely replied, "What? Do you work here or something?" "Nope, I just have a little respect." She glared at me, got her food, then turns to everyone else in line and very loudly says, "Hope you like waiting," and storms out. I wanted to punch her. I found a cockroach in a Sonic burger. Well, half a cockroach. When I went inside and found the manager and showed him the chewed up pile of burger in the parking lot, with a half roach, he told me I put it there. That was in 1985. I haven't eaten at a Sonic since, no big loss. Applebee's. Every Tuesday night they have a clown called Stinky the Clown come and perform tricks for every table. Stinky accidentally hit me in the eye with his handkerchief. I woke up the next day with the worst pink eye in the entire world. I will never eat at Applebee's again. Earlier last year I was traveling through Eastern TN, and we decided to hit up this local KFC favorite that toted an all-you-can-eat buffet. The sheer novelty of an all-you-can-eat buffet overrode my common sense, so my traveling partner and I went there for dinner. It may have been, hands down, the most depressing meal I've ever eaten. The chicken was lukewarm at best. Everything kind of had this greasy film over it. The vegetables clearly were pulled out of a cheap can and more or less were nothing more than a medium 4 butter sauce. The mashed potatoes were clumpy and dry, like they had been sitting out for a week. They only gave us 3 cheap paper plates and would not supply more if asked. I thought that was weird for an all-you-can-eat buffet, but it didn't matter because after a second round, I had enough. I just had an awful feeling sitting in my stomach that felt like grease and sadness. What was worse were the people around us. The place was packed with what seemed to be locals sitting around eating a very standard weekday meal. Their bodies reflected that. Never in my life have I seen so many morbidly obese families. Children only the age of 10 were easily 3 times my weight. We returned to our hostel and I ended up puking everything over that evening. I didn't stop vomiting until I tasted my oatmeal from earlier that morning. Then I was fine. I just had an awful feeling sitting in my stomach that felt like grease and sadness. That's how I feel every time I eat at KFC. So I used to go to this Taco Bell down the street from my high school after finishing band practice with my friends. We went enough times that the drive-thru lady named Tiffany would be ecstatic to see us and give us free stuff. She called us baby every time we went through. It was great. I bet you're wondering how could any of this be bad? Well, the story takes a turn for the worst very quickly. So we do the usual Taco Bell run and order the same thing, get the same free stuff. We get to the window and Tiffany is all smiles when her manager comes up to us and asks to see the recipe. We are kinda deer in the headlight and Tiff is nervous, so the manager grabs the recipe and asks why we are getting free food and drinks in addition to our one quesadilla. Tiff just kinda looks down and mumbles while the manager berates her on giving people free food, then fires her. She began crying and pleading for the job, saying she needed it for her son, but the manager threw her out and gave us our order, the one quesadilla of course, and said he would be keeping an eye on us. TLDR got a very friendly employee fired. First, a tiny bit of background. My wife, who at the time was not just lactose intolerant but get earth-shattering cramps, horrendous smelling diarrhea and feel like she was on fire reaction if she got just a little bit of any kind of dairy. Later we found out this was caused by a faulty gallbladder that had since evicted. Well, she went to McDonald's right across the street from her crappy retail job and ordered a McDouble with no cheese, like she did about 3 times a week because it was cheap and close and she had very short lunch breaks at said crappy retail job. Well, she gets back to her work and noticed, hey, there is cheese on this. So she has to go all the way back over there and walks into the restaurant and asks to have it replaced. The manager comes over and asks what's wrong. When she said she ordered it without cheese and they put cheese on it, he responded with a flippant, so now this manager was not some just out of high school kid, he had to be in his 30s, so you would think somewhere along the lines he had grown up, but I guess not. She explains to him she is allergic to cheese and needs one without cheese. So he hands the sandwich back to the grill area and they scrap the cheese off her, wrap it and try to give it back to her. She watches them do this because he was too far away for her to stop them before he got back to the counter, and then trying to be polite as possible explains she cannot eat a sandwich that has had melted cheese scrapped off of it because she is freaking allergic, you stupid waste of human flesh. So he huffs and gives her more attitude and rolls his eyes and angrily throws the sandwich away and asks the grill to make a new one. She gets it, asks him if he is sure it doesn't have cheese on it. He says yes and she leaves without checking it. Gets back to work, opens up the bag and guess what she finds on her damn sandwich? 2 slices of cheese. So she gets permission from her boss, since now she has already burned like 35 minutes to get a stupid sandwich from across the street and she normally only gets a 30-minute break. Walks back over there and the manager sees her coming and asks her now what. My wife asked to speak to a different manager, who didn't give her any attitude, apologized personally, made her a new one, opened it in front of her to verify there was no cheese on it and refunded her meal as well. My wife of course got both managers' names and their store number. We then proceeded to report the entire story to McDonald's corporate with a glowing review for the manager who handled it correctly and a very condemning retelling of the crappy service manager A gave her. We got some gift cards from corporate and the owner of that particular franchise verified the story with manager B and manager A's employment was terminated. They asked my wife to come tell her story at her employee meeting but she declined. I went into a Roy Rogers restaurant once. I paid for a burger and fries. I expected there would be a cook in a kitchen somewhere who would then make a burger for me to eat, but instead I was shown a rack of stuff made a few days ago sitting under red lamps. I took one and unwrapped it. The dried up meat patty slipped out and clonked on the counter. Clonked. I looked up at the cashier and they just stared back at me. I put it back on its stale bun. There were other people in the restaurant. They were all eating this stuff like some kind of weird zombie Twilight Zone. How did these people not know there were other fast food joints, equally accessible off the highway, where for the same money a person will actually cook the meat right then and there and serve it to you, and include things like vegetables? I even saw one eat a French fry, which broke off like a pretzel stick in their mouth. Madness. That was the first and last time I entered a Roy Rogers. A repost from an AskReddit asking what the creepiest thing I ever experienced on a road trip was. Like and subscribe for more daily Reddit videos.